How do the Philadelphia Eagles fix their run game in the second half of the 2023 season? What's our confidence level in certain areas of this team being fixed? All that and more on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code in all lowercase, LockedOnNFL, for your first deposit match up to $100. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. One final show for the bye week. The Eagles 8-1. They have Sunday off, and then comes a massive matchup next Monday night against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, a rematch of Super Bowl 57. Can't wait to kick up coverage, Gino, next week of that game. That's the thing, is like these games are tough coming up. Got the Bills matchup, the 49ers, Seattle, another matchup with Dallas. But it is really fun, I think, when you play the best teams in football. It makes it more exciting, especially if you get that win.
I'm not worried about Buffalo, to be honest with you. The rest of the team's like scared.
I said on the show yesterday, Gino, they're all, I don't know, the Chiefs even, like you look at their wide receivers, I think the Eagles could be favorites and win all those games. I'm not predicting they will run the table, but I'm feeling confident heading into this gauntlet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, on FanDuel, they're going to be favorites. Like, that's absolutely a fact. But when you look at it, Lou, I look at the opposite. These teams should be fearing having to play the Philadelphia Eagles.
That's what I'm saying. San Francisco's lost 3 in a row. I mean, they're all...
And they play Jacksonville. I mean, they're on a stretch right now where they can't afford to slip up either. The Cowboys have a pretty easy schedule over the next couple weeks.
They do.
But the Eagles are handling their business, and I love what you said on the show yesterday, Lou. It's a complete 180 from who they were last year to where the point where they were ideally benching their guys in like the second and a half quarter, like halfway through the third, coasting because they're up. In these games where they're coming from behind, they're doing everything you can imagine in the last 2 calendar years. They're coming from behind, they're winning with a large margin, and they just have to get back on track. And I think it boils down to our point today of how can they fix this run game to get back on track to be that team where you are not just a one-dimensional throw the ball down the football field. As much as we love it, Lou, the Eagles are a run-first team through and through.
I love that the passing game is their main weapon right now. They're one of the best passing attacks in football. But, Gino, yes, they do need to get back to being a balanced attack that has, not only their main, right punch, but they need a counter as well. And that's what normally the run game is supposed to be. And throughout our years with Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni in this era, and the Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson era, you could call it, because their run game has always been good with this offensive line as long as we've been Eagles fans. This year, though, however, it's been the first time in a long time they're kind of in a rut on the ground. Normally, it's been the passing game sometimes can't get going, and the run game is what boosts everything up. Now it's been the opposite over the last month. So when you look at some generic stats, it doesn't look too bad. DeAndre Swift is top 5 in rushing yards right now. The Eagles are a top 10 team in rushing yards total and rushing yards per game. They're 4th in rushing touchdowns this year. So you see that and you're like, where is the problem? But when you look at the numbers lately, since week 4, DeAndre Swift is only averaging 3.4 yards per carry, which is 57th in the NFL. The Eagles, since week 4, are only averaging 3.4 yards per carry, which is 30th in the league. If you look at their leading rushers over the last 4 games, it's 47 yards, 62, 57, and 43. I mean, they're struggling on the ground. And again, yes, you want to be a team that's led by your passing attack. Love seeing how good Jalen Hurts has been in the pocket. But again, you need to be able to win in multiple ways. You have to have that counter punch because every game is going to call for something different. And I think this team, a lot of time, Gino, they feed off of being dominant on the ground. I think it just helps so much in so many different ways.
And it helps just encapsulate what the Eagles like to do, right? And I'm a big proponent of winning those middle 8 areas. How do you do that? You set up your 4-minute offense right before halftime. You mix in the run game. You mix in the pass. Same thing towards the end of the game, where last year, getting back to your point from yesterday's show, where they're out to a lead, why were they able to run the ball so successfully? It's because they're out to a lead and they have this offensive line that is just going to impose their will, kill the clock, and the game's going to be over.
And
because
you can put
just
teams
worked,
away.
You worked 8 minutes off of the clock multiple times last year late in games. You have to get back to that because there might be a time when you're in a shootout, but you need to put that team to bed. Washington almost twice has come back and beat you in that exact scenario where you just need to choke the clock. And multiple times you've had like 3 and outs where you're punting it away and you've only burned a couple seconds off the clock, or guys are running out of bounds with under 2 minutes to go in the football game, and just little things to get back to. But I think to take a 30,000 foot view look at it, Lou, you have to take the good with the bad when it comes with the offense, to where the yards per carry is definitely something to keep an eye on. I wonder how much that tush push factors into that, where you're getting like 1 or 2 yards per carry every single time. We might have to factor that out of that.
That's actually a good point I didn't even really think of. Sure.
That's my accounting brain. I mean, get back to the root cause there, but boiling it down, you had some changes on the offensive line when it came to injuries. I mean, Tyler Steen gets his first start after Sua Opeta goes down in the game before, where he had to come out, and Tyler Steen goes in. Cam Jurgens was in there before that. Now with the bye week, Lou, let's hope that you could get those starting 5 back to normal, and
Correct.
That's what it comes down to. We know that DeAndre Swift has been efficient. He finds holes. He has that burst. Kenny, not so much. But if they could get back to that starting 5, where you don't have to kind of run away from one side of the football field, right? You're not going to favor Tyler Steen when you have those 3 on the left side, right? But when you get Cam Jurgens back, I think that is going to be a big time push forward. And a lot of it too, Lou, I'm sure has to do with Jalen Hurts not being 100%.
Yeah, there's really no threat for him right now keeping a lot of these footballs. And I think that definitely hurts this team. So it's a combination of a lot of things as to why they're struggling, Gino.
I totally agree. And the one thing I've seen, though, Lou, is that they can do it, right? If you look at that game on Thursday Night Football, look at those 2 teams trying to run the football, right? It's like, oh, man, I mean, unless you're playing Carolina, Chicago's probably not going to run it that good. The Eagles can do that against anybody and have.
That's the thing is, like, we've not only seen it in past years with these exact players, but we saw it, week 2 against the Minnesota Vikings. The passing game was still out of sync. So what happened? DeAndre Swift took over. The same situation against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yep. So there have been multiple games this year where the ground game looked like the elite unit of 2022, 2021, so on and so forth. Lately, it hasn't been great, but yeah, I'm hoping after the bye week, get Cam Jurgens back, get Jalen Hurts a little bit healthy. This offensive line gets more in sync. They're fresher. I think that's going to go a long way, and I think it's just very important. Again, I'm not saying I want the Eagles to go back to being a run-first offense because of how good the passing game has looked, but you never know at times when the passing game could struggle in some of these matchups. You want to have that counter punch, and as you mentioned, in these close games, you want to be able to put teams away, and the run game is so instrumental to that. And I think overall, just too, Gino, it's a morale or like an attitude thing. I think this offensive line builds confidence in pass protection too when the run game gets going. I just think this team feeds off of it, and it's demoralizing for a defense when the Eagles kill 9 minutes of clock in the quarter and then the offense is rusty coming back on the field for the other team. I just think it's a really important part of this team that needs to come back, and it's been non-existent for a few weeks now.
One of my favorite things to see in a game, it's obviously victory formation, but before that, to get to that, you've seen many times, and going back to last year, where the offensive line, they start to cook towards the end of the game, and you'll see one of the old linemen look to the sideline, and for those listening, I'm kind of like making like a fast motion, like let's get up to the line. They love to do that. You're exactly right, Lou. They know that when they are going, they're like a bulldozer. Like no force is going to stop them. Late in the fourth quarter, when you have to worry about them all game, I got to worry about Jalen Hurts getting outside the pocket. You're going to get tired. They've worked teams down, and the tougher, the longest mantra has helped this team so much, because you could get hit and stand for 11 rounds in a boxing match, but if you get caught on the chin, that's what the run game is, Lou. It's like having a really good chin. It's like no matter what, we could get back to basics. I could take a punch. I'm going to keep coming back, and I'm just going to punch you in the face too. So they can get back to that through a healthier offensive line. Maybe Jalen Hurts gets back to who he is, but I think favoring DeAndre Swift is something they need to do going forward. There should not be any splitting carries with a Kenneth Gainwell moving forward. It should be the DeAndre Swift show, and until that hot hand cools off, let the kid cook.
And even, honestly, at this point, give Rashad Penny some more looks over Kenneth Gainwell. That's where I'm at in the backfield. Hopefully the run game does get going after the bye week. Gino, coming up next, I want to play a game with you. We're going to do some Eagles questions regarding some things that maybe they need to fix, what our confidence level is on a scale of 1 to 10 in certain areas. So we'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
we're able to talk to you today here at LOE, thanks to our friends over at Prize Picks. If you don't know what Prize Picks is by now, you're missing out, but you can still get in on the action. It's daily fantasy sports, and all you have to do, it's easy. You make an entry by picking more or less on 2 to 6 players. So, for example, it's basketball season now, and you could combo guys into picks with NFL players. So let's say you want to have LeBron James more points and combo that with Travis Kelce with his receptions. You can do that. And you can also play alongside some of your favorite players and celebrities, Meek Mill, Andrew Schultz. How many people from Philly wouldn't want to play with Meek Mill? I mean, the guy basically won us a Super Bowl with his anthem, Dreams and Nightmares. I mean, come on. It's easy to get involved at Prize Picks at this point. We've been doing it for 2 years, and you can get in on the action today. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL in all lowercase for a first deposit match up to $100. You put in 100, they'll give you 100 bonus dollars for you to make an entry. It's easy. 2 to 6 players, more or less. Get in on the action at Prize Picks.
Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is also sponsored by Jace Medical. If you or someone you would love, of course, would want to get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily medication, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. They have the Jace case, which is such an incredible tool. 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use shipped right to your door. We dealt with some huge blizzards in the state of New York last year in Buffalo, and it really did call for the Jace case. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well, $20 off your purchase. Here's what a verified customer had to say about Jace. Quote, "I'm thankful for the service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered antibiotic kits. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. So do we right here at the Locked On Eagles podcast." Again, head over to jacemedical.com. Use that promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. We thank Jace Medical for sponsoring Locked On Eagles today. All right, Eagles fans, we're continuing on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Guys, Locked On is kicking up our coverage on Fridays with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Host Tanitra Batiste, Jarvis Davis, Kyle Krabs, they'll break down every game on the NFL slate to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, betting angles, and more. Plus, get the in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know these teams better than anybody else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. All right, Gino, let's dive into our confidence level in certain areas of this Eagles team after a 8-1 start to the season. Got the bye week now. Coming up next, Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs. This team is 8-1, which is the best record in football. Not everything, though, has been perfect. We spent segment 1 talking about how they can fix the run game, which has definitely struggled more than it has in the past over the last, I would say, 3 to 4 games. I want to ask you, just before we wrap up that topic, let's start this game up. If you had to rate your confidence level in the run game bouncing back in the second half of the year from a scale of 1 to 10, what would that number be?
I think you could put a solid 8 on it.
Yeah.
To where you're pretty confident. It's just a few things have to bounce your way, right?
Okay.
I mean, a lot of the things too in the run game are just ineffectiveness down in the red zone. You get a turnover from Kenny Gainwell and DeAndre Swift with a weird fumble against Dallas as well. And I'm very confident they get back to it because that's the MO. And who do I believe is the best coach maybe in football? Absolutely in the organization. It's Jeff Stoutland, who is also their run game coordinator. I trust this guy basically with my life at
almost
this point to run this team.
This point,
100%. 100%. And he'll get his guys right. And any group that was going to hold themselves accountable, the offensive line, they really bleed that through and through. I mean, Jordan Mailata was talking in his post-game press conference that he's going back to the huddle after he allows a sack on Jalen. He's like, "Oh, Jalen, I feel so bad. I didn't want to get you sacked." He's like, next play. He's like, "Well, I don't want to get my quarterback hit." So hopefully that's a good thing moving forward, is that these guys, they know they're the Bulls, they know they're the Rhinos, and they're going to move this thing forward. So you got to be confident. I mean, you've seen it. If I didn't see it and I'm still grasping for straws, then somebody might want to take me back to reality. But we've seen it. So a solid
We've seen it for years. Yeah, I would say honestly 9 out of 10 at this point because we've seen it also this year. They have the personnel. Cam Jurgens will be back soon. DeAndre Swift, again, hasn't really been the issue, I don't think. And so to me, you have Jeff Stoutland, as you mentioned. I think it's 9 out of 10. I think they're going to bounce back. Jalen Hurts is going to get healthier too, and I think that's a really big factor to this equation. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm pretty confident just because we've seen it with these guys this year and for so long. And, the thing is, Jason Kelce's not dropping off right now. He still is elite. So is Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. And so you get Cam Jurgens back. Yeah, I think they're going to bounce back in the run game for sure. Let's stick on offense here. I had this question yesterday in the mailbag, and I wanted to get your thoughts with Dallas Goedert out. We've talked about it a little bit last week, how they're going to replace Dallas over the next month. What is your confidence level in Julio Jones, Olamide Zaccheaus, and Quez Watkins being, I don't want to say replacing Dallas Goedert's production because, as we've mentioned on the show before, they're not going to do that. But when it comes to just being reliable targets down this stretch that they can rely on more than they have, out of 10, what would you say? Just because they really, even since Julio Jones has been in, he had that one big touchdown against Washington, but the Miami game, he was quiet. Same with this week against Dallas. OZ, since that Tampa game, really hasn't done much of anything, and Quez coming off IR. Like, what's your confidence level in these other receivers that are not named A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith?
I got to say one thing about Quez Watkins real quick.
Sure.
You watch the Eagles mic'd up this week with A.J. Brown from the Dallas game, on Devontae Smith's touchdown where he just does a nice little go, stop, go. Quez Watkins, there's one scene when he looks at Devontae, he's like, I told you all week, go, stop, go. And I'm like, I think Devontae was going to figure that out himself. I think he's the guy that might go and do it. And
some guys preach better than they practice.
Yeah, 100%. My confidence in those three in particular,
mine's 4 out of 10. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say like a 5. If you throw DeAndre Swift in there, I'll feel a little bit better, like bring it up to a 6. But this is what I have to see, right? Like, especially with the tight ends as well. Can you get anything out of them to maybe even leverage that up a little bit? But in those three in particular, the one I trust the most, I think to make the most impact between the 20s would probably be OZ. Maybe get him involved more to maybe even help your run game out a little bit. Get him involved on the edge more to where he can use his explosiveness and yards after the catch ability on first and second down to be a supplement to the run game. And Julio Jones, he's going to be good in the red zone. And Quez, talk about a question mark. So I don't really know. It maybe I drop it down to a 4, but I think a 5, it's like Julio Jones is a Hall of Famer. If his number is called, I do trust him. It's just, let's see how Brian Johnson gets these guys cooking a little bit and how the snaps play out, because I think that could be a big proponent to it as well. Because if Quez just all of a sudden comes back and takes all the snaps from OZ and he's the same player that he was before the injury.
I hope that's not the result.
Yeah, then we might be a little less positive.
And especially with Julio Jones in, if Quez comes in and he's dominating the wide receiver 3 snaps, I think that's crazy. We'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting to watch for sure.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me counter you.
Yeah.
By the time Dallas Goedert comes back, which one of the 3 tight ends has the most receiving yards or receptions?
This is a tough one. Who has 20 yards compared to
exactly?
Who has 20 yards compared to 10? Yeah. I want to believe it's Albert O, just based on talent. But
get something out of this guy. I'm hoping, Lou. Like, he had 300 yards in Denver one year. Like, he's got to be worth something.
Look, I know this is an 11 personnel heavy team. I want them to be that way. Their receivers, that's who they run through. I'm not saying draft a tight end in the first round next year, Gino, but they have to make it, not a priority, but they have to upgrade this position next year. You have to have some sort of 12 personnel package. And it's non-existent. And I think that's what Howie was trying to do with Alberto, but just not enough. And I'm not saying, again, go trade or sign a huge contract to a tight end, but they got to do something else. Because like you said, my confidence level, who has the most yards? Probably Alberto, but I don't know what that would even look like. Again, it's probably like 50 yards over a few weeks.
Yeah, that really could be it. Because if you think about it, just put these guys on a depth chart of pass catchers. You got your big 3, or what do you even have? Yeah, your big 3 wide receivers right now. Then you probably throw DeAndre Swift. You probably throw OZ and Quez. And then it's like, I'll probably take DeAndre Swift in Boston in the receiving game over these three guys.
Gainwell at this point too.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny doesn't look half bad receiving the football.
Just like in the
open
2-minute
space.
drills, he'll probably have more receiving yards than one of these tight ends.
Yeah,
so.
no, that's a good bet to make. Like, who will have more in garbage time, Kenny G or these guys throughout their entire?
I unfortunately would bet
weeks.
Gainwell, and that's not something that I want to bet on because everybody knows right now I'm not the biggest fan of Kenneth Gainwell for sure. Gino, let's flip the script before we take a break. On defense, your confidence level in Eli Ricks, Bradley Roby, and Sidney Brown. I'm not going to say being stars in the slot, but being solid enough to where this is not a position the Eagles are winning in spite of, out of 10.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, so your confidence level in Eli Ricks, Bradley Roby, and Sidney Brown, I'm not saying being a unit that you win because of, but
I got you.
The slot position is not something you're winning in spite of the rest of the year. Like, do they improve compared to, like what we saw against the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, no, I get it. No, I was just thinking it's like, do they win in spite of them? Do they not win in spite of them? I was trying to think like how to word it, but no, I think that group, it really comes down to how they're going to deploy Darius Slay moving forward, in my opinion, because that's the biggest question mark. I mean, teams like Dallas, who has a slot heavy type of game where your number one is in the slot, I would like to see that matchup be my number one guy against their number one guy. And I think Sean Desai has been more apt to do that than the previous guy that was in the building.
He who shall not be named.
Yeah, he who shall not be named. He had another great quote today. Looking at James Bradbury, though, down this next stretch, Lou, you're going to play San Fran. It's like, okay, can he hang with Debo a little bit more? That's a bigger body type of guy. Can he show out in that type of game? You look at the next game against Buffalo. Can he be the Gabe Davis type of shutdown option or a Dalton Kincaid type of guy? And then you go to the slot. It's like, where do these guys pick up? They just have to shut off the third best option. If Sean Desai is smart, he will not put himself in that predicament that he was in last week against Dallas, where Eli Ricks, Sidney Brown, and that whole group has to man up in the slot and just hope for the best. It really is, how much do I trust Sean Desai to put them in the right position?
It's a great
because
way
I
to
think they can make plays. Absolutely. I don't think these are guys that you win in spite of.
They're only going to get better, Gino. Like, these are rookies that are playing brand new positions. I would hope as the season goes on, they're going to get better. And they've had bright moments, Sidney Brown and Eli Ricks. And so even too did Roby when he was healthy against the Rams.
And that's another one. Bradley Roby, if he comes back, he looked pretty good and probably the best option for you. So there, it then allows you to let Darius kind of be Darius and let him play on the outside so you don't have to play more matchup base. But if you want to, and Roby does look good, it opens up the playbook a little bit more for you. But I think having that plan of rotating these guys based on matchups is the way that you have to go about it. Because Eli Ricks can cover guys with speed, right? He might not be the best defending some of these bigger bodied wide receivers, but he can. Sidney, he might be better suited to go and defend these guys. He's not defending CD Brown one-on-one, or CD Lamb one-on-one. We know that. But these guys can get by. They're good athletes. If they couldn't run, then we might have a bigger problem.
I agree, Gino. Yeah, I'm pretty confident, actually, that, again, they're not going to be Avonte Maddox, but I don't think the result of what you saw against the Dallas Cowboys is going to be the slot problem moving forward between these three. I would hope it's going to improve, and I'm pretty confident.
I think like a 7 would be a decent score to give that.
I agree. I agree. All right, Gino, coming up next, got some stats for our listeners to wrap up the bye week. Some impressive ones on both sides of the ball regarding Jalen Hurts, Jalen Carter, A.J. Brown, all that and more as we wrap up this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. This time of year, it can be a lot, and it's natural to feel some sadness and anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all of the stress and change, something to look forward to make you feel grounded and to give you the tools to manage everything going on in your life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge if it does not work out. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. You're going to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com, BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Get 10% off your first month of online therapy. We thank BetterHelp for sponsoring the Locked On Eagles podcast today. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Louis DiBiase joined as always by Gino Camilleri. All right, Gino, let's get into some fun stats to wrap up the bye week. And these are incredible. This is what I love about the Eagles the last 2 years is because they've been so good. The numbers are just so much fun to look at. And this was something that you were talking about on Twitter today. And Jalen Carter was getting some trend on social media because of that mic'd up segment with him and Zach Martin at the end of the game. And Zach Martin's been saying what we've all been saying this year since the offseason of the draft, like how the F did the Philadelphia Eagles get you? And Jalen Carter, the numbers after that Dallas Cowboys game, he now leads the league for all defensive tackles in double team wins, which is just unbelievable. And I said this on the show the other day, the fact that in that big play where Josh Sweat gets a sack with 23 seconds to go, Carter is being double teamed of all of those stars up front is unbelievable.
One of the things that'll be really cool to talk about going forward with Jalen is that you now know that no matter what, over the next, hopefully, decade, right? Like that's what you're hoping for if he has a Aaron Donald-like career, but let's take it one step at a time. But you're hoping that going into every offseason, every draft, you know that we already have a guy that's going to have two guys focused on him. And then we could just get the best guys that win one-on-ones around the board. And that's how we're going to win football games.
It's unbelievable.
That's what you've been hoping for. We said he could get hopefully close to the guys like Dexter Lawrence and the Aaron Donalds. And
he's already
literally today, I saw the chart that said who is the best in the NFL when it comes to pass rush win rate against double teams.
Was it just defensive tackles or was it all positions?
No, it was only defensive tackles.
Okay, you were getting me excited there for a second.
No, rate of my bad. That would have been pretty great. He's still, if you're up there with Aaron Donald and Dexter Lawrence, you're top of the league. But slightly above Aaron Donald was Jalen Carter. And I think Zach Martin is right. Like Zach Martin, Hall of Famer. How the heck did they get this guy? All these teams, we got to go at these teams. All these Locked On hosts, I want to just put one in front of us at a time and just grill them. What was your team thinking?
Lamp right over their head.
What was your team thinking passing up on this guy?
I'll be good cop.
Unreal.
Bad cop in that.
yeah, definitely.
No, it's unbelievable. And Jalen, again, he stepped up in a big way against Dallas. He had that half a sack. He's at 4 right now, halfway through the year. To me, the favorite to win Rookie of the Year. Seeing that stat today, though, every time I think of Jalen Carter, it makes me giddy. It's unbelievable that this kid is wearing midnight green. I think he's only going to get better, which is terrifying because he's just as good as any defensive tackle in football right now. Gino, interesting stat I actually saw today on Twitter. I don't know if you knew this, but Jalen Hurts, despite his limited mobility so far this year, this was very surprising to me, he leads the league in rushing first downs. So that to me is incredible, but I think it just shows that when he is needed to step up and make a play with his legs, even when he's limping, you saw this against Miami, you saw it against Dallas too, he's still not at full strength, but I don't know if it's the adrenaline or something, but he's just such a gamer that he still finds a way to pick up these first downs in some crucial situations. So that I guess this stat just to me shows about his toughness, his resiliency and just the ability to grind through that with a bone bruise. The fact that he's doing this is very impressive.
This might be the double-edged sword to why your yards per carry are a little bit lower, because it's like we need this guy to pick up 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 situations, and he's picking them up with his legs. And there's been some times where it's 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and he just gets to the corner and he still goes. And the one thing that I'm very not that my word really means anything to Jalen Hurts, but I'm just proud of his evolution to protect himself a lot more this season and only run out of necessity, knowing what his arm means to this team, man. Knowing what it means for him to just be upright in the pocket. He can't be there if he's taking these hits, but at the same time, knowing when you have to step up for your team. There's a moment when Superman knows he has to be Superman. And that's what I think is the difference between the guy that we saw before and Carson Wentz, who was like, I'm just going to blow up all the buildings and who cares what the damage is. But Jalen's like, all right, we got to do this thing controlled. We can't let the buildings crumble. We can't let the foundation fall.
We had the Hulk, and now we have, I don't know.
Yeah, what's our Avenger analogy here? Who are we going to have?
We had the Hulk, and now we have, who's another powerful, I don't want to say Smart Hulk because I hate Smart Hulk.
Yeah, no, that's Carson Wentz.
Captain America, I guess, because he's so calculated. Or
yeah,
I don't know. You could say any of them.
Yes,
Iron Man.
I think Captain America is because Thor just comes in, and he just wreaks havoc. Captain America's when I have to.
It could be Thor though, because Thor is actually like conscious, unlike the Hulk. So yeah.
I mean, he's all the Avengers just kind of like put into one at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And that stat really did blow my mind today. Jalen Hurts leads the league in rushing first downs, which is unbelievable. Another fun stat here, talking about his elite accuracy this year. Jalen Hurts has already surpassed Donovan McNabb for the most 73% or more. I should say, this is a better way to word that. He has completed at least 73% of his passes in more games than Donovan McNabb did his entire career with the Eagles. And Jalen Hurts has only been the Eagles starter now for 3.5 years, which is incredible. And he's had, 3 straight games where he's done that this year.
Donovan stays taking L's these days, man. Like, poor guy.
It.
But he kind of does it to himself. But no, I think this is another one where it's like you're just proud to see the evolution. When you look at like some of the greats, and I think Drew Brees is like the ultimate outlier of this, to see his accuracy continue to get better and better to the point where it's like 71%, 72% at some points in his career. I didn't think Jalen Hurts could be a 55% completion percentage type of quarterback. To see him get to 73% and do that the most times out of any quarterback in Eagles history, Lou? Or is it just more than Donovan McNabb, or is it in history?
No, it's the most in history.
Yeah, that's an insane thing. To the development, the trust in the kid, and the overall ability to know who he is. It just gets smarter and smarter, man, to where he's 24 and he already knows how to read defenses this well. I think that's what completion percentage really measures. How smart are you within your scheme, and how well do you understand defenses? Because over the last couple weeks, you've gone against some defenses that have given you some challenges, but he has picked them apart. Defenses in the division. Yeah. What better example could you want than your quarterback? I mean, Dak does a great job against Philly all the time, like showing that he knows how to rip apart our defense. Jalen's doing the same thing, man. He's done it 3 times in the NFC East already this year, and he's only getting better. He's what is his ceiling when it comes to completion percentage?
It keeps going up. It's unbelievable. He now has the highest completion percentage in franchise history among actual full-time starters that didn't just play a few games. He passed Nick Foles on that list. And Gino, it's funny. I was just scrolling through my camera roll today, looking at some old pictures from like 2021, and I had a chart here from Jalen Hurts and his passing performance then. And to see, I don't know if anybody has ever had this kind of improvement as a passer at this such radical rate, whereas just a few years ago, he was 26th in completion percentage, was 61.3. His quarterback rating was 87.2, which was 22nd in the league. His QBR was 48.8, which was 19th. And now you look at him in all these passing statistics, and he's atop the league in everything. I mean, I don't know if there is a comparable player that has improved this much as a passer from where they were to where he is now, where like some have gone from good to great, but Jalen Hurts went from mediocre to elite in a, year and a half long span? Not even.
I think the closest comparison, and we bring this up a lot of the time, is Josh Allen, right? I think that...
Sure, but has Josh ever been this accurate from like an inside the pocket perspective?
I mean, I'm thinking more of the jump from like 55 to like a 60 some odd % completion percentage, but I don't think Josh, even this year, has been that sustainable when it comes to putting that ball like on the... I mean, there's still times when you look down the field and Josh will overthrow a guy by like 6-7 yards. And you're like, oh, that's Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. Jalen Hurts, I keep going back to you, Lou. Find me the plays where he's putting the ball in a dangerous area. He did that one time against Dallas, but the ability to put this ball like Tiger Woods just exactly where it needs to be, like he's chipping it onto a green. It's one of those things that when I was at the Senior Bowl, Lou, and I saw this kid with my eyes, I'm like, I don't see how he's going to make it full time in the NFL. And this guy he's got to win an MVP this year. I don't think if he continues this, there's no arguing that. He is the MVP. He just keeps getting better. And like I said a few shows ago, Lou, if Jalen Hurts, and this is for all of our everydayers, if anybody tells you that Jalen Hurts is just a guy who is an athlete that can kind of throw the football, they are not paying attention. This guy is a quarterback through and through.
It almost doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't.
A quarterback that has this kind of rushing ability can also throw the football at this level in the pocket. It's almost unfair, and it's unbelievable about it for sure. Yeah. One last stat before we let our listeners go. I love this one from Next Gen Stats. AJ Brown has accumulated plus 292 receiving yards over expected this year. Plus 292, which is 68 more yards over expected than the next closest player. Love that. That's how I'll end the show.
He's a beast. It essentially means that guys are trying to tackle you at the point where you are expected to be tackled. They can't make a tackle.
And he has almost 300 more yards than what he should
Yes.
have.
Yeah, think about a running back getting hit at the line of scrimmage, and then he has 300 yards beyond that initial contact. That's essentially what it is. And that play, and they put it up in the mic'd up when he catches that ball in double coverage, and he just kind of takes this little bubble screen in, because once he gets ahead of steam, nobody's taking this guy down.
Yeah.
Dude, Tennessee, what were you doing? What were you guys doing?
Fun way to end the show for sure. Fun way to end the bye week. Chiefs week coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast next Monday through Friday. It's a big one, a rematch of Super Bowl 57. It's going to be personal. The Kelce rematch, Mahomes versus Hurts. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles for your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Enjoy your bye week this weekend. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for downloading and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.